Thousands gather showing support for Israel. Next at 4, we follow Baltimore residents making the journey as war rages on. Then Maryland's Republican leaders unveil their solutions to curb crime. Our team breaking down the changes their 5 bills could bring and the questions they were not able to answer. Plus, D.C.'s mayor calls a state of emergency for juvenile violence. We're pressing Mayor Brandon Scott to see if he would take similar action. And we ask what he is doing to address this crisis.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 4.
This is a live look at the National Mall in Washington, D.C., where tens of thousands of people have gathered in support of Israel.
Groups from across the nation, including Baltimore, coming together to call for the release of hostages being held by Hamas and a national response to a rise in anti-Semitism across the U.S. The march comes as Israel continues its shelling and ground operations in Gaza. More than 10,000 Palestinians are reportedly dead. There are also calls for a ceasefire, but Israeli officials say they will not consider one until all of the hostages are home. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mary Bubala.
I'm Kai Jackson. We have team coverage on the March for Israel rally and the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. Let's go right to national correspondent Christine Frizzell.
We are trying to get Christine's story up here for us. You also see Amy Simpson there in Washington, D.C. as well, and we'll have reports from both of them.
Yes. In the meantime, Mary, Baltimore residents, as we understand, we're going to go to Christine Frizzell's story.
The National Mall in Washington packed with people gathering in support of Israel. 5.5 weeks after more than 1,400 were killed there by Hamas.
This is totally because of Hamas, because they're holding our hostages and because they attacked Israel.
I think this shows the world that we're not afraid and we're here. We're going to stay. We have one country and we're going to protect it.
Another central theme of the march, combating anti-Semitism, with incidents up more than 300% from this time last year and skyrocketing on college campuses. Also, the subject of a hearing just a few blocks away.
We have a crisis today on America's campuses. This is an emergency.
Incidents include threats to kill Jewish students at Cornell, anti-Semitic messages projected on University of Pennsylvania buildings, and an overall campus culture Sahar Tartak says makes her fear for her safety at Yale.
I sit in a crowded dining hall and I ask myself, how many people in this room want me dead?
More than 1,600 Harvard alumni in a letter calling for meaningful reforms on campus to ensure that every student is safe, threatening to withhold funds to the university, adding, "We never thought we would have to argue for recognition of our own humanity." Faith leaders demanding change. You are here on Capitol Hill. What do you hope lawmakers can do?
We hope lawmakers will simply enforce Title VI. The federal government has as a rule that it will only provide funding to programs, to universities, to public spaces where everyone feels safe.
Concerns about safety now and in the future, a presence permeating in Washington. I'm Christine Frizzell reporting.
As the war goes on, our nation has seen a dramatic increase in anti-Semitic incidents. In fact, over a 2-week period last month, the Anti-Defamation League recorded a total of 312 anti-Semitic incidents. Take a look at the surveillance video coming out of Miami Beach. A man seen jumping out of his car at a stoplight, slashing at a sign in front of a bagel shop that proudly stands with Israel. And in an Atlanta suburb, a neo-Nazi group projected a laser message onto a highway overpass. Drivers could clearly read, quote, "This land is our land. Hail Hitler."
They are finding new ways and embracing a message of hate that they would never accept for their own communities.
Right now, a Maryland teacher is under investigation for pushing conspiracy theories about the war in the Middle East. The Daily Wire first shared social media posts yesterday by the Montgomery County teacher. Her posts claim Palestinians are being killed and their organs are being sold. According to the Daily Wire, the school system said it is investigating the instance as a personnel matter. Some reports show Jewish Americans are buying firearms to stay safe. The National Desk Dee Dee Gatton spoke with a gun shop in Charlotte, North Carolina, that's seeing this trend.
And they expressly said that they were Jewish and they were buying guns for protection. And some of the things I've heard were, I don't really like guns, but we feel like we need a gun.
And let's take another live look from Washington, D.C. as well. At 4:30, we'll have a live report on how the event is unfolding this evening.
Continuing coverage now as state GOP leaders meet in Annapolis to announce a new crime plan. The main focus, juvenile justice. It comes as communities across the state are plagued by youth crime. We have team coverage on the youth crime crisis tonight, starting with Alexa Ashwell with new questions about the crime spree at least 2 teens are believed to have been involved in over the weekend. Alexa?
We know Foxtrot is a key crime fighting tool when it comes to actively tracking suspects, and it was called for while responding to the incidents these 2 teens are being believed to have been involved in. But Foxtrot, we're told, was not available. Just yesterday, we told you sources had confirmed a 13-year-old and a 14-year-old were shot during an attempted armed robbery and were believed to have been connected to several other crimes that had happened within that same hour. That included an attempted armed robbery, and possibly an armed carjacking. Over the police scanner, you can hear dispatch and responding officers calling for Foxtrot to help them find the suspects, but Foxtrot wasn't available. Take a listen.
We think this is part of our pattern that's been dormant for a minute. Yes, we're on the line with that task force right now. Fox up yet?
Negative. I sent multiple requests, including a request for county air.
BPD's aviation section, also known as Foxtrot, is a key component to the crime fighting effort. It's not only as a force multiplier in that from above it can replace 10 to 15 police officers on the street, if not more, but it also is critical because the BPD has a restrictive pursuit policy. So officers are really, really discouraged from engaging in pursuits and in many cases outright prohibited.
That was law enforcement expert Jason Johnson weighing in. More from him, plus the response we received when we questioned Baltimore police at 5. Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
Restoring safer communities is our top priority for the 2024 legislative session, and we are pleading with our Democrat colleagues to join us in making it their priority as well.
New tonight, Republicans in Annapolis are unveiling their proposal to address public safety and juvenile crime. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost pressed the lawmakers about their plans and joins us live from Annapolis. Mackenzie?
Yeah, guys, so this proposal has 5 different plans targeting public safety, right? Some of them aren't new. We've heard them before, specifically the Violent Firearms Offender Act. But other policy plans were crafted specifically stemming from concerns that we've been hearing from all across the state, from parents, prosecutors, and police when it comes to juvenile crime. The juvenile crime proposal from these Republican lawmakers has a few different components to it. One calls to allow parental approval for a juvenile to be questioned by law enforcement to serve as a substitute for an attorney. Another aspect says that if a juvenile under the age of 13 uses a gun to commit a crime, they would automatically be given to the supervision of the Department of Juvenile Services. And then another aspect is anyone under the age of 13 who is arrested for 3 times or more for committing the same nonviolent crime like car theft would then be given to DJS for supervision. But we know that the concern surrounding juveniles stems beyond the walls of detention facilities served by the Department of Juvenile Services. A lot of this has to do with home monitoring. And right now it appears as if the Republicans who are unveiling this plan don't have all of the details ironed out. Is there an element in this proposal that goes after the home monitoring aspect of DJS?
So not in this particular proposal, no.
So just so I'm clear, you're referring more children to DJS, but not providing funding or programming to help DJS supervise them?
You know, I'd like to say something. No one thinks that an 11-year-old who shoplifts should be referred to a facility. People do think that a 15 or a 16-year-old, that perhaps it's their second or third time that they've committed these escalating series of crimes. It starts with a nonviolent car theft and goes to a carjacking and goes to a first-degree assault and goes towards taking a shot at someone. Those kids need more than what the child in need of assistance or child in need of supervision system can provide them. And so I think resources have been cut. That's a budgetary issue. As you know, we'll see what Governor Moore's budget says.
Another bill in this public safety package has to do with changing the way diminution credits are earned for inmates. Coming up at 5, I'll explain a little bit more about what that means.
And Mackenzie, these proposals come about 2 months before the next session starts. Where does Governor Moore stand on all of this?
That is the big question, right? Just yesterday, the governor told me that he does have plans to unveil a full juvenile crime plan. The details of that have yet to be announced, at least publicly. But we also know that here in the State House, Democrats have a supermajority in both chambers. So any of these proposals unveiled today by the Republican caucuses will have to seek some level of support from Democrats if they want to see them cross the finish line. We're live in the State House. Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Mackenzie, thank you. Some of the bills in the Republican package include legislation that has failed to gain traction in the past, like the Violent Firearms Offender Act. It calls for increasing the penalty for someone who uses a gun illegally in a crime from 3 to 5 years. The bill also calls for penalties for someone who knowingly gives or sells a gun to someone to commit a crime. This legislation was a top priority for former Governor Hogan, but it failed to pass in 2020 and in 2021.
Republicans are also trying to make the theft of a firearm a felony. Again, this legislation has been introduced by GOP lawmakers since 2018 without success. And new this year, the Drug-Free Roadways Act of 2024. This legislation seeks to reverse a plan passed last session, banning police from using the smell of marijuana as a reason to make a traffic stop. Republicans argue allowing law enforcement to make these types of stops can help get guns off the streets.
That brings us to our question of the day. Who do you trust more to handle juvenile crime, Republicans or Democrats? You can vote right now at foxbaltimore.com/vote. We have some breaking news coming into our newsroom right now. Baltimore County Police arrest a man in connection to the death of 4-year-old Amir James back in May. The medical examiner has ruled that death a homicide. The suspect, 26-year-old Zurel Smith, was temporarily caring for the child at the time of his death. He now faces multiple counts of child abuse and is being held by police without bond.
A youth crime emergency in Washington, D.C. How Washington's mayor is responding to the crisis as Fox 45 News questions leaders here in Baltimore.
Next, is Baltimore going to keep its promise for a return to weekly recycling? Now, the failures in DPD could keep impacting you.
And after a 60-degree day, if you want to do some exercise outside, maybe a run or a jog after work, of course, it's going to be getting dark, so be careful. But 56 at 5 p.m., 54 at 6, and 51 at 7 p.m. Not bad, but we've got even warmer times ahead. I'll let you know if it comes with rain. That's in my Weather Authority forecast.
Fox 45 News, winner of 16 2022 Regional Emmy Awards, more than all other Baltimore news stations combined.
While we understand that we're not going to arrest our way out of this violence, we also know that young people need to have consequences and boundaries.
In Washington, D.C., the mayor is taking some drastic action to address the rise in youth crime.
Mayor Muriel Bowser says kids are out of control and more needs to be done to make sure they're facing consequences for their actions.
Fox 45's Maxine Stryker joins us live in Baltimore with what Washington's mayor is calling for. Maxine?
Well, Mary, D.C.'s mayor declaring a public emergency order on Monday to help combat the juvenile crime crisis there. And today we asked the mayor in Baltimore if he would do the same. In the nation's capital, violent crime is spiking among young people.
Young people need to have consequences and boundaries.
And the mayor is taking action.
When young people are involved in violent crime, when they're 12, 13, 14, that means that those children need serious intervention.
D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser declared a public emergency order Monday in hopes of addressing youth crime. The mayor calling it an imminent threat to the health, safety, and welfare of residents. In Washington, D.C., in the first 9 months of 2023, there were 458 juvenile arrests for robbery, carjacking, homicide, and assault with a deadly weapon, a 10% increase from the year before. The mayor is calling on the Department of Youth Rehabilitation Services to increase capacity for youth in their custody and for real-time monitoring of GPS devices upon their release. She's advocating strongly for tougher consequences and pushing back against the lenient laws.
We believe that more kids, as you've heard me say many times, if they've been, arrested for robbery after robbery, shouldn't be in a group home, in my opinion. They should be in a secure, detained space.
Meanwhile, in Baltimore City, youth crime also persists with little to no repercussions. Earlier this month, police say a 12-year-old boy used a gun to rob a 31-year-old man of his bike. The boy was arrested and charged with armed robbery and taken to the Department of Juvenile Services, but within hours, he was released. Within 48 hours of his release, documents show the juvenile was locked up again and charged with 2 more armed robberies. That same November day, police say a Baltimore woman was assaulted and robbed by 2 juveniles, the youngest 12 years old, both released within hours from DJS. Car thefts by juveniles are up 166% in the city. We reached out to Mayor Brandon Scott's office asking, given the state of juvenile crime in Baltimore right now, is this something you would consider? What measures are you taking to address juvenile crime?
If you say we've got a youth crime crisis, then the perception is things are out of control.
Political analyst John Deedy says he wouldn't expect to see the same action from Mayor Scott.
In an election year, the idea of calling for a youth crisis and all this stuff, I think politically they may feel this could panic the public more than anything.
Well, we did not hear back from Mayor Scott's office with any answers to our questions today. Reporting live in Baltimore, Maxine Stryker, Fox 45 News.
Maxine, thank you. For our full coverage on the youth crime crisis in Baltimore and across the state, head to foxbaltimore.com.
All right, a pretty fall day. Highs at 60 degrees. We'll take it. 58 right now. Clear skies. Winds out of the northwest at 11. Sun is already well on its way to setting. Sets between 4:30 and 5 now. Humidity is nice and dry at 34%, so it feels good. The dew point, that's our measure of moisture in the air, is dry as well, crisp, right at 30 degrees. And the Toyota Ocean Harbor Skycam showing the beautiful azure blue sky in the background. 58 now here in Baltimore. We're at 55 at Columbia. Head down to 70. We're at 55 at Gaithersburg. Westminster's at 57, 54 at Elkton, 56 Chestertown, and 56 down at Denton, 59 at Annapolis. And all these temperatures are about where they should be for this time of year. So it's that seasonably, pleasantly cool fall temperatures that we're enjoying. And all the temperatures across our area are a little bit at least warmer than yesterday. Some spots as warm as 5 to 10 degrees up over 24 hours ago. We promised you a somewhat milder day today and tomorrow, and then actually even warmer yet by the end of the week. Temperatures again, they're in the 50s, some 60s down to our south. Those 40s and the low 50s that were around here, those are slowly but surely scrunching away up into New England. HG radar shows south of Atlanta, a little band of rain here. There's actually a whole lot of rain south and west of that. You see here a weather maker that's impacting portions of the southern United States, but not going to make it up here. Looks like fair weather high pressure is going to be our fair weather friend over the next several days. And finally, we will get impacted by a cold front way off to our north and west. That probably happens by later Friday into Saturday. Chance of some showers there. And then it looks like it will cool down once again. Now, out in the tropics, yes, we still have about 15 days left of tropical season, and there's a 70% chance of tropical development here over the southern portion of the Caribbean Sea. Could get pushed somewhere toward perhaps Haiti, maybe even Puerto Rico. That whole area is going to have to watch right in here for the potential impacts of what could eventually be in about 6-7 days a tropical depression or a tropical storm. The cold front that's going to come through here should protect us from any of that, push that thing out to sea. So Future Scan says temperatures overnight into early tomorrow morning, settling way down into the 30s. Once again, could be near freezing by tomorrow morning, so some widespread frost to potential. You may have to use some time to scrape the car off. Temperatures back into the 50s to right around 60 by tomorrow afternoon. Very similar day to today. For tomorrow, Ravens game on Thursday. What a day. 65 and sunshine. We will see temperatures falling through the 50s and 40s, though, for the game. So tailgating looking good. Probably a jacket for the game. A couple of PM showers on Friday. Could near 70 into early Saturday. 57 Saturday as skies clear. Winds pick up, and it stays dry into early Thanksgiving week.
Well, the crowd is pushing more than 60,000 people in D.C. Coming up, a live report from our nation's capital from the March for Israel rally. We are back with more live coverage on the March for Israel, a live look at the National Mall in D.C. right now. Things are just wrapping up, but earlier this afternoon, there were tens of thousands of people in D.C. showing their support. Groups from across the country, including Baltimore, came together to call for the release of hostages being held by Hamas and a national response to a rise in anti-Semitism across the U.S. Fox 45's Amy Simpson is there with more.
Tens of thousands here along the National Mall for today's March for Israel. Just take a look at these crowds, and among them, several thousand from Baltimore. For some, it started this morning. 35 miles away in Baltimore County, more than 70 buses loading up. Thousands from around the Baltimore region making the trip here to the National Mall, participating in today's March for Israel.
We're all here to show that Baltimore supports Israel.
This Pikesville woman among the masses.
On our bus alone, we took an associated bus at 9:30 this morning. There were Jews of all different types and stripes. There were kids as young as, I think, 6 or 7 on our bus, with people probably in their 70s and 80s.
Bringing her 11-year-old son, the 6th grader missing school to participate.
But I chose to come because it's so important.
And as you can imagine, security is really tight here downtown. There's these security checkpoints at several spots around the mall, along with fencing. And take a look at all these law enforcement vehicles capped off with dump trucks blocking the end of the road here. And along with that highly visible police presence, a visible show of solidarity from all corners of the continent, from Miami to Philly to Ontario. Participants in today's rally converging on the nation's capital from both near and far. Despite tragedy and war spurring today's march, some seen dancing, singing, or chanting, many wearing or waving Israeli flags, or holding signs calling for the release of hostages. This Howard County woman said it's personal for her.
He's a distant relative. He lives in Israel, and he was kidnapped from the Nova Music Festival.
An emotional day for some, seeing the sea of demonstrators standing shoulder to shoulder, even as the conflict continues in the Middle East.
And I'm proud to be Jewish. I'm proud to be standing up for our people, and I hope that some of the hate will stop.
We just need peace. We just need peace.
In Washington, Amy Simpson, Fox 45 News.
Well, the city is walking back its promise to bring back weekly recycling. Why it's become so difficult for officials to restart the program. After a winter without snow, will we see any this year? Taking a look ahead at your winter weather outlook.
This is a live look at Washington, D.C. right now, where tens of thousands of people have gathered this afternoon in support of Israel. These demonstrators are coming from across the country, even Canada, to call for America's continued support of Israel's war effort. The demonstrators also demanded U.S. leaders do more to address a rise in anti-Semitism across the country since the start of the war between Israel and Hamas. Well, organizers say more than 60,000 people were there showing their support.
Tom Rousey from our Sinclair sister station has more from the rally.
Tens of thousands came to the National Mall in Washington, D.C. for the Stand with Israel rally. Many saying they wanted to be here to stand with the nation of Israel, but others saying they have a reason closer to home to be here as well, rising anti-Semitism. The crowd that came out heard from everyone from celebrities to rabbis to politicians to pastors. I spoke with one woman from Washington, D.C. here whose parents survived the Holocaust. She said the U.S. has long been a safe haven for Jewish people, but she is very concerned that is changing.
I thought my parents were so unlucky. How did they get so unlucky to just be born at a time when people hated Jews? And I was raised in a free world, and I couldn't even imagine. And what is happening today is so disheartening.
And since this is an issue where passions run very high, police were very concerned. There was a large police presence and also a lot of security that wasn't wearing uniforms as well here. As far as folks who came here today, they came from all over. Americans I spoke with, some came from the local area here around Washington, D.C. Others came from as far as California. Reporting in Washington, D.C., I'm Tom Rousey.
And we've been seeing reaction to that March for Israel rally on social media. Let's take a look at some of the posts that we're getting in right now. We'll share them with you. This is Bethel congregation in Baltimore arrived in Washington, D.C. It looks like that's Union Station right there. Here, look at this. Very large crowd gathering here on the National Mall for the March for Israel. More posts real quick. Look at the D.C. subway system. I grew up riding this. Tens of thousands of Jewish people getting off the train in Washington, D.C. And again, a lot of police presence to keep everything safe. And last one here, thank you to each and every one of our Jewish and non-Jewish brothers, sisters, and allies.
Well, it is not just happening in the U.S. Events were also held in Israel today. Demonstrators marching from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem in support of the hostages being held by Hamas. Israeli and American military officials believe there are more than 220 hostages in Hamas's custody, including a handful of Americans. Israeli leaders say they will not consider a ceasefire until the hostages are returned. The president today said a deal to free those hostages is going to happen.
Fox 45 News will continue to track the latest on the war in Israel and the rally in D.C. today throughout our newscasts.
Coming off one of the least snowy winters in Baltimore history, will we be in for a different story over the next few months?
Chief Meteorologist Jonathan Myers shares this year's winter weather outlook.
Well, here it is. This is the Fox 45 2023-2024 winter outlook. So there are a few things that I look at when I put the outlook together to judge what kind of winter we're going to see around here. Well, number one is what we would call Eurasian snow cover extent. In other words, the amount of snow in October specifically that's over Siberia. There's also a look at sea ice that's accumulated on what's called the Barents-Kara Sea, which is north of Siberia. That's got signals that have been observed in connection with the strength of the winter along the East Coast and most specifically in Maryland in the mid-Atlantic. And also is La Nina or El Nino forecast. La Nina is a cooling of the waters over the equatorial Pacific, whereas El Nino is the opposite, the warming of the waters over the equatorial Pacific. And that's been a recent change that we've seen. We've had dominant La Nina lately, but now we've switched over to El Nino for this winter. So first, let's take a look at the pillar number one, if you will, the current snow cover versus average over Siberia. This is for the month of October. And you see here the blues, that is snowier than average, and the reds are less snowy than average. And you see the blue here, that means a little bit more snow than average. And if you have a little bit more snow than average in Siberia, typically it leads to a colder and more severe East Coast winter. Now, thing is, you look here, this is a general rule, but you look here and you see that, yeah, the snow cover has been above average for many of the past years, except for 2011. Now, if you remember last year, Yeah, we had that above average snowfall, but guess what? We only had 0.2 inches of snow around here, a record lowest amount for Baltimore. But overall, if you look at the pattern that's generally consistent here, snow cover extent that we have over Siberia will favor below average temperatures around here and above average snowfall, at least a little bit below average temperatures and a little bit above average snowfall. Now, in terms of the sea ice coverage over the Barents-Kara Sea, you see here there's not a whole lot there. And in fact, that is below average for this time of year. And really what that is going to mean for us is the potential of a weakening polar vortex. So that would allow cold air to sink south from the Arctic. So sea ice cover actually favors below average temperatures here on the East Coast during the winter. So far, the takeaways, colder and snowier than average, perhaps. That'd be a big change over what we saw last year. Now, let's take a look at what we expect around here in Baltimore for El Nino years. Now, if you have a moderate El Nino, the temperatures run typically way below average. Now, if you have a strong El Nino, they run way above average. And actually, the idea is that potentially we will start our winter with a moderate El Nino, but then it looks like, or actually I should say, we will start our winter with a strong El Nino and then end our winter with a moderate El Nino. So that means maybe the snow may be weighted toward, say, the first of the year and beyond. Now, in terms of precipitation, these El Nino years where it's weak to moderate, like we're expecting around here, higher than average precipitation, and there you go. For a moderate El Nino, winter snowfall goes way above average, but a strong El Nino, like we'll see in the first portion of the year, equates to right around average snowfall. So in terms of El Nino winters around here, and in terms of snowfall, overall, it's greater than average, but you add in overall a moderate to strong El Nino, that's a signal of the blue here, a much snowier than average pattern, or a much higher than average precipitation pattern with near or below average temperatures here in Baltimore. So Eurasian snow cover favors a slightly colder and maybe a little bit more snowy winter here in Baltimore. Sea ice coverage favors a colder than average winter in Maryland, and a moderate to strong El Nino favors the potential of near or below average temperatures and more snow than average, as well as above average precipitation. And that would mainly come in a few storms, potentially maybe a couple of big ones as we head towards the end of the winter. So here are our numbers. These are the averages. And as I promised you here, it looks like it's going to be a little bit colder than average. But look at that, potential of over 28 inches of snow. That's what my forecast is saying for winter 2023-2024. We and our shovels will see.
All right, Jonathan, thank you. And Jonathan's entire winter weather outlook will be on our website momentarily. Just head to foxbaltimore.com and click on the weather tab to find it and go through it.
DPW is the poster child for an agency that needs to be completely revamped. They are the highest funded city agency, and they are failing to perform their most basic functions.
Well, back in Baltimore, the city's efforts to restore weekly recycling by early 2024 may fall short. You'll remember that was the timeline proposed in Mayor Brandon Scott's State of the City address earlier this year. But as Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor is going to show us, instead of getting recycling back on track, DPW once again citing some setbacks. Rebecca?
That's right, Mary. When it comes to restoring recycling, it has just been one broken promise after the next. Just last month, DPW said that weekly recycling would start rolling out in February. But then a few weeks later, suddenly, that long-awaited timeline was scrapped.
After almost 2 years of rolled back city services, finally a clear timeline that will help clear the sidewalks, piles of plastic and mounds of cardboard caused by bi-weekly recycling.
When are we restarting weekly recycling? You will see the first rollout in February. That'll be our first initial rollout, and then you'll see the rest of it will be around April or so.
But just 3 weeks later, the exact same question.
When are we restarting recycling?
We still don't have a date yet.
Not receiving the same answer.
So were those dates that we were given previously, are those incorrect?
I would say we're evaluating those more thoroughly.
Citing continued staffing shortages and a lack of working trash trucks, DPW Director Richard Luna walking back the promise made in the prior hearing and in the mayor's State of the City address back in April.
You have my word that we will return to weekly recycling by Q1 of 2024.
Enough is enough already.
Pointing to the city's own charter requiring recycling to be performed weekly, Councilman Yitzi Schleifer now calling for a complete overhaul of DPW leadership.
They've been in violation of the law for the past 2 years, and no other jurisdiction has had this kind of impact and had this stuff go off the line the way Baltimore City has.
Similar calls also coming from city residents.
I had to build a fence to contain it all, to hold it for that long and, not create a bunch of litter around the neighborhood.
Desmond City among the 200 residents joining this petition against the city demanding restored recycling.
That frequency is codified in our city charter, and it's not an option for the mayor to be out of compliance.
Today, Fox 45 sending questions to DPW asking why the new weekly recycling timeline was retracted, when a new timeline will be established, and what is the response to residents who are frustrated by the lack of basic city services. So far, no response.
Now, I also sent questions to the mayor's office asking for his response to DPW potentially breaking a promise that he made to city residents. As of news time tonight, though, I have not heard back. Reporting live in Baltimore City, Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
Thanks, Rebecca. Recycling isn't the only issue DPW has faced recently. Fox 45 News has repeatedly heard from Baltimore residents who say they're being overcharged on their water bills. One woman says the bill for her one-bedroom apartment ballooned to more than $15,000. That's enough water to fill an Olympic-sized swimming pool. DPW has also dealt with 2 water quality crises in the past year. That includes an E. coli contamination and a parasite that causes GI issues. Now, the department also lost control of the Back River wastewater treatment plant for months to the state after toxic substances were found in the water. The state says there were failures from all levels of leadership at the plant. Will the government be able to avoid a shutdown? We hear from one of the congressmen whose vote could have massive impacts on the country's future. And buying a gift card could put you in a tricky situation. We'll take a look at a scam that tries to take advantage of the holiday season. Time is running out for Congress to avoid a government shutdown this weekend. Today is the first time the House is able to vote on Speaker Mike Johnson's two-step funding plan. One bill funds the military, Veterans Affairs, Transportation, Housing, and the Energy Department through mid-January. Another extends funding for the rest of the government through early February. However, there's already been pushback on that plan from members of both parties. Fox 45 asked Congressman Andy Harris what it will take for the government to stay open.
We're going to keep the government open. Again, we have to get back to a more normal process. Americans realize that Washington is broke and the new speaker's trying to fix it. And again, it's going to be a slow process, but I think the new speaker's on the right track.
Well, the House Speaker's short-term plan seems likely to pass. House Democratic leadership this afternoon indicated they will back it ahead of the vote, saying there are no major cuts to spending. Americans saw inflation cool last month, but what will it mean for interest rates? With today's report showing prices rising at a slower pace than September, the Fed is poised to end its rate hiking campaign. The Fed's fight began last summer when inflation rose to nearly double digits. Rates at that time spiked to a 22-year high. Well, the holiday season is here, and with it, it's the return of holiday scams. There are a million different ways criminals try to steal your money. Casey Arsenault from our Sinclair sister station in Cincinnati has more on one scam that could leave you empty-handed.
This is a low-tech scam that's happening in stores across the tri-state. 'Tis the season for holiday scams, but don't worry, you don't have to be a victim. Here's what the con looks like. Now, scammers are replacing the barcode on gift cards with a barcode of their own that they've printed off and made into little stickers. So they go into the stores, replace the barcodes on the gift card, so that when you go to buy one for your loved one and load it up with money, that money's actually going directly to the scammer.
It's difficult to protect yourself. One of the things about gift cards is they're anonymous. They're not linked to another human. They're not linked to your ID. You know, it's not like a credit card where you would have some verification and then be able to say, hey, I didn't make that charge. It's truly anonymous as to who is using that gift card, who is loading it up.
Here's how you can protect yourself. When you go in and buy a gift card, make sure you reach for the ones in the back. Those are less likely to be tampered with. Make sure you also run your finger over the barcode. You might be able to feel if there's been a sticker put over the original barcode. When you're paying for this gift card, make sure the gift card you buy and the one they're ringing up on the register and that's on your receipt matches. For example, if you buy an Amazon gift card and you see American Express or Starbucks on your receipt, you know there might be a problem. Check your balance after you buy this gift card to make sure the money is on there. Keep your receipt as well as know the date you've activated it so that you have proof if something happens. If there is an issue with your gift card, you're going to want to call the store where you purchased it right away. And you can avoid this scam altogether by buying your gift cards online. Fighting fraud, I'm Cassie Arsenault.
All right, take a look outside right now. We've got some mainly clear skies and some mild temperatures too, at least compared to what we have seen lately. About 60 this afternoon. We're now at 58 as we take a beautiful look at, well, maybe not so beautiful traffic on 695 on our traffic camera network here in Towson. Winds out of the northwest at 11, humidity 34%. That's fairly dry with a dew point at a crisp and dry 30 degrees. Temperatures all across the board a little bit milder than yesterday. A lot of 50s to near 60, which is 3 degrees up over 24 hours ago here in Baltimore. 9 degrees warmer at Annapolis, at 5 degrees warmer at Stevensville. And this is a means to a even wider, larger scale warm up that's going to be coming our way. Notice the 40s. They're forever moving north and away from us. So that's good for the next few days. We're at 58 now here in Baltimore. The warmer numbers down to our south and west, those continue to gradually flood in. So tomorrow, very similar to today, probably around 60 degrees as the mainly clear skies stay with us. Fair weather high pressure going to stave away this rain that you see Atlanta southbound. And again, the warming temperatures will continue to build in. Take a look at our temperature trend all the way through the almost end of the week. There's a chillier air that's going to be kind of reinforced by some systems moving over New England. But warm air will continue to sift in for us. So that means as we hit Thursday, Friday, could be well into the 60s around here. But by Friday, especially Friday night into Saturday, there could be a few showers. And There's also going to be this down in the tropics, 70% chance of tropical development, this red X. This is going to move northbound, potentially up to maybe Haiti, also clipping maybe close to eastern Cuba. Could be a tropical depression or maybe even a tropical storm. And of course, we still have a couple of weeks of tropical season left. Looks like that'll be shunted off the coast as a cold front heads our way by the end of the week. So Future Scan says overnight tonight into early tomorrow morning, a lot of those blues setting up. So that means temperature is going to be getting down into likely the low and mid 30s, maybe even a couple of upper 20s in the cold spots. So that means potentially a frosty start for you, at least some extra time for warming up the car and doing some of that scraping. And then tomorrow afternoon, high temperatures getting likely into the mid to upper 50s to near 60 once again. And guess what? Gets even warmer yet, just in time for the Ravens game on Thursday. That's a great looking day there. 65 by the Ravens game just after 8 o'clock here at M&T Bank Stadium. Probably temperatures falling through the 50s and 40s. So you probably need a jacket there, although tailgate time looks great. 68 degrees, some late showers on Friday, maybe primarily Friday night. Lasts into Saturday during the morning, should taper and clear during the afternoon. 57 and a little breezy, blustery day on Sunday. And then it looks like things gradually, slowly try to warm next week, but it'll still be at or below average as we head into Turkey Day week there Monday and Tuesday.
Jonathan, thank you. Coming up at 5 o'clock, Washington, D.C. under a state of emergency due to the rise in juvenile crime. Fox 45 News questions if Maryland should do the same.
Another headache for parents, this time involving preschool kids. I'm Angela Brown in Washington, D.C. The shortage keeping some kids out of preschool.
The teacher shortage is not only impacting K through 12 education, but also preschool. The National Desk, Angela Brown, explains.
Parents are trying to give their kids a leg up by enrolling them in preschool. The only problem, there's a shortage of preschool teachers, and many of those kids, we're talking 3 to 5, are just waiting on the wait list. Another headache for parents, long waiting lists to get their kids into preschool.
In the development of a child, we're losing the most qualified people.
Linda Smith from the Bipartisan Policy Center calls the shortage of early childhood teachers severe.
The programs just simply can't pay the wages and compete.
Take the Genesee Intermediate School District in Michigan. Not enough teachers to fill preschool teaching positions, creating wait lists for kids. Eddie Kendall, GISD.
We have about maybe 40 lead teacher opportunities in Genesee Intermediate School District.
Smith says the problem? Funding.
Most of early childhood programs are what we call for-profit or market-based.
Which means some preschool programs have to generate enough cash to cover staff.
We need stable funding in early childhood and child care in particular.
RAND estimates as of 2019, 53% of 4-year-old children living in poverty were enrolled in preschool, compared with 76% of their counterparts with a family income at $125,000. In Washington, D.C., I'm Angela Brown.
All right, and taking a look at your weekend forecast, we've got, again, maybe a Friday that's going to be fairly dry, although as we head to Friday night, notice this system. That's that tropical system potentially that could move over Haiti over the next couple of days. That thing's going to move off the coast potentially as a nor'easter. Close for comfort, but I think it will miss us. There could be a stray shower later Friday night into Saturday morning, a few showers, and then after that, looks like things dry out nicely. A cooler weekend ahead. Football Thursday night, temperatures fall from around 50 and into the 40s, and then the remainder of your weekend, Friday, 68, late showers, morning shower Saturday, 53, and dry and blustery Sunday.
Coming up on Fox 45 News at 5 o'clock, analyzing the officer shortage in Baltimore, the impact it's having on residents. Plus, thousands march in Washington, D.C. as the conflict in the Middle East continues. The calls for a ceasefire.
Juvenile crime on the minds of Republican leaders in Annapolis as they meet to talk about solutions. Fox 45 News is taking a closer look at their proposals.
Another potential government shutdown, the new proposed plan, and why some say it's the wrong move.
Israel has a right to defend itself, and America has a duty to stand with Israel.
In Washington, D.C. today, thousands of people rallied in support of Israel, how they're fighting back against a rise in anti-Semitism.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 5.
Restoring safer communities is our top priority for the 2024 legislative session. And we are pleading with our Democrat colleagues to join us in making it their priority as well.
Republicans in Annapolis are unveiling their proposal to address public safety and juvenile crime. Thank you for staying with us. I'm Kai Jackson.
And I'm Mary Bubala. The new proposals come as the mayor of Washington, D.C. declares a public emergency as a result of the spike in juvenile crime. Now, many are questioning why Maryland isn't doing the same.
We have live team coverage covering all angles of the juvenile crime crisis.
Let's begin with Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost. She pressed the lawmakers about their plans. Joins us live now from Annapolis. Mackenzie?
Yeah, Mary and Kai, there are 5 different bills in this public safety package. Some of them aren't new, like the Violent Firearms Offender Act, but others were crafted specifically in response to some of the concerns we've been hearing from parents, prosecutors, and police when it comes to juvenile crime.
The next legislative session is about 2 months away, but Tuesday.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
House and Senate
Today
Republicans
Tuesday,
rolling
right?
out their
Yeah, okay.
proposal now to address public safety.
There is an expectation that the governor comes to the table.
In response to the death of Pavel Lepere, the 26-year-old tech executive who was killed in her own Baltimore apartment building, the suspect, Jason Billingsley, who was released from prison early after a previous rape conviction thanks to what's called diminution credits, or credit for good behavior or participating in work programs. Now, the GOP tailoring a plan targeting those credits.
In order to keep our community safe, criminal sentences need to mean something.
The plan seeks to end the credit system for people convicted of first and second degree murder and cap it for other offenses. But one of the hallmark bills in this package centering around juvenile crime in Maryland.
The Juvenile Justice Restoration Act is a response to loud outcry from the public, law enforcement, and state's attorneys.
The plan calls to allow for a parent approval of a juvenile facing questions from law enforcement to be a substitute for an attorney. Requires anyone under 13 who commits a crime with a gun to be supervised under the Department of Juvenile Services. And if a kid is arrested 3 or more times for the same nonviolent crime, like car theft, that juvenile will go to DJS. The plan comes on the heels of 2 juvenile crime hearings in the House, where prosecutors from around the state.
If a crime clearly has occurred, we should allow our officers to take action, and it's frustrating to the community that we cannot.
Have all but begged lawmakers to amend the current laws preventing kids 13 and younger from facing charges for certain nonviolent crimes, like car thefts, where in Baltimore alone, there's been a 227% increase this year compared to last. But the juvenile crime crisis isn't just confined to the walls of DJS facilities, and juveniles on home monitoring are finding themselves victims of crime, like Jalen Richards, a 12-year-old gunned down in South Baltimore. Or suspects like Tristan Jackson wearing an ankle monitor during the Brooklyn Day mass shooting in Baltimore, and now it's not clear if the Republican plan has the details ironed out.
Is there an element in this proposal that goes after the home monitoring aspect of DJS?
So not in this particular proposal, no.
So just so I'm clear, you're referring more children to DJS, but not providing funding or programming to help DJS supervise them?
House Minority Leader Jason Buckle stepping up to answer instead.
No one thinks that an 11-year-old who shoplifts should be referred to a facility. People do think that a 15 or a 16-year-old, that perhaps it's their second or third time that they've committed these escalating series of crimes. It starts with a nonviolent car theft and goes to a carjacking and goes to a first-degree assault and goes towards taking a shot at someone. Those kids need more than what the child in need of assistance or child in need of supervision system can provide them. And so I think resources have been cut. That's a budgetary issue. As you know, we'll see what Governor Moore's budget says.
While Republicans remain hopeful their plans will succeed, passage will hinge on support from Democrats in the State House.
Now, juvenile crime legislation will no doubt be a major topic during the upcoming legislative session. But so far, we have yet to see specific plans from Governor Wes Moore or other Democrats here in Annapolis. We're live in the State House. Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
As they're turning out the lights on her,
Yeah,
I saw,
seemed
right?
like it, right? Yeah.
Well, some of the bills in the Republican package have failed to gain traction in the past, like the Violent Firearms Offender Act. It calls for increasing the penalty for somebody who uses an illegal gun in a crime from 3 years to 5. The bill also calls for penalties for somebody who knowingly gives or sells a gun to somebody to commit a crime. This legislation was a top priority for former Governor Larry Hogan, but it failed to pass in 2020 and 2021.
Republicans are trying to make the theft of a firearm a felony. This legislation has been introduced by GOP lawmakers since 2018 without success.
And new this year, the Drug-Free Roadways Act of 2024. This legislation seeks to reverse a plan passed last session banning police from using the smell of marijuana as a reason to make a traffic stop. Republicans argue allowing law enforcement to make these types of stops can help get guns off the streets.
In my jurisdiction, 80% of the guns we seized illegally on the streets of my county last year came out of car searches because of the odor of marijuana. We're not getting those 80% anymore.
We have continuing coverage on the juvenile crime crisis. In Washington, D.C., the mayor is taking drastic action to address the rise in youth crime. Fox 45's Maxine Stryker joins us live right now with what Mayor Muriel Bowser is calling for and asking Baltimore's mayor if Baltimore should do the same. Maxine?
Well, that's right, Kai. On Monday, D.C.'s mayor declaring a public emergency to address the juvenile crime crisis that's unfolding there in the nation's capital. In Washington, D.C., in just the first 9 months of 2023, there were 458 juvenile arrests for things like robbery, carjacking, homicide, and assault, a 10% increase from the year before. The mayor calling now on the Department of Youth Rehabilitation Services to increase capacity for youth in their custody and for a real-time monitoring of GPS devices upon their release. She is advocating strongly for tougher consequences and pushing back against the lenient laws on the books.
We believe that more kids, as you've heard me say many times, if they've been, arrested for robbery after robbery, shouldn't be in a group home. In my opinion, they should be in a secure, detained space.
Well, we reached out to Mayor Brandon Scott's office today asking, given the state of juvenile crime in Baltimore City right now, is this something the mayor would consider? And what measures is the mayor taking to address the current juvenile crime crisis? At this point, we have not heard back with any answers to either of those questions tonight. Reporting live in Baltimore, Maxine Stryker, Fox 45 News.
Maxine, thank you. That brings us to our question of the day. Who do you trust more to handle juvenile crime, Republicans or Democrats? You can vote right now at foxbaltimore.com/vote.
New questions tonight about the crime spree at least 2 teens are believed to have been involved in over the weekend. We're learning responding officers were calling for air support, but the police department's helicopter, which is called Foxtrot, apparently wasn't available. Alexa Ashwell questioned the department and joins us live with what she found. Alexa?
Yes, Kai, Foxtrot is a key crime-fighting tool when it comes to tracking suspects believed to be actively committing crimes. Well, at one point in time this past Saturday, it was not available, and a law enforcement expert believes it could have stopped a crime spree sooner.
To confirm, we have 1 attempt armed robbery, 1 complete armed robbery, and possible carjacking.
Over the radio, you can hear Baltimore police officers and dispatch piecing together 4 violent crimes that had just occurred within minutes of one another in the southeastern district.
Units be advised, we're getting another armed robbery at gunpoint involving a white Honda Elantra. Fox is down.
Dispatch informs officers on the ground that BPD's helicopter, Foxtrot, is not up. Officers calling for it again.
Do we think this is part of our pattern that's been dormant for a minute? Yes. We're on the line with that task force right now. Fox up yet?
Negative. I sent multiple requests, including a request for county air.
BPD's aviation section, also known as Foxtrot, is a key component to the crime fighting effort. It's not only as a force multiplier in that from above it can replace 10 to 15 police officers on the street, if not more, but it also is critical because the BPD has a restrictive pursuit policy. So officers are really, really discouraged from engaging in pursuits, and in many cases outright prohibited.
Former Baltimore Police Deputy Commissioner Jason Johnson weighing in, saying had Foxtrot been up and actively pursuing the suspects, officers could have stopped them sooner. The spree ended with 2 teens being shot.
This just exposes how necessary it really is.
Fox 45 News questioned BPD asking why Foxtrot was grounded. A spokesperson wrote, Foxtrot has set hours of operation, and those hours fluctuate during high crime times. On Saturday at 8:30 p.m., Foxtrot had not started their shift yet. This was not due to staffing, funding, or mechanical issues.
Having airborne law enforcement, it's essential.
Now, BPD has not yet confirmed what, if any, charges the 13-year-old and the 14-year-old may be facing, or if anyone else was taken into custody. The investigation ongoing. Alexa Ashwell, Fox 45 News.
Well, Baltimore's police union says staffing shortages are so dire that the Baltimore City Police Department is requiring officers to work overtime in order to fill critical shifts. In the Southern District, police this past weekend only scheduled 4 officers to work patrols Saturday and Sunday mornings. Commanders apparently were forced to recruit 12 other officers to work overtime in order to fill vacancies, while a police spokeswoman insists the shifts were fully staffed. Union leaders say relying on officers working overtime is a dangerous predicament.
BPD has struggled with staffing for decades.
With a shortage of more than 500 officers, union leaders say the strength of the force is almost half of what it was a decade ago and draining each month.
It impairs the BPD's ability to deliver the services that it delivers to the community: public safety services, uniform patrol, responding to 911 calls, providing prompt preliminary investigations.
In July, the Southern District came under fire for being understaffed and unprepared to deal with the mass shooting at Brooklyn Homes.
And now we are going to take a live look from Washington, D.C., where thousands of people from Jewish organizations across the nation gathered at the National Mall today for the March for Israel. Participants say they are showing solidarity with Israel, calling for the release of hostages being held by Hamas and condemning the rise in acts of anti-Semitism following the October 7th Hamas-led attack on Israel. Israel has since declared war with Hamas and sent ground troops into Gaza in hopes of taking down Hamas and freeing the hostages being held by the terrorist group. Meanwhile, thousands of Palestinian civilians have been killed in the crossfire. Fox 45's Amy Simpson was in Washington, D.C. all day. Coming up at 5:30, she'll bring us the latest developments and words from Marylanders in attendance. Still ahead tonight, efforts to avoid a government shutdown underway, the proposed solution being talked about.
Recycling woes continue for Baltimore residents, the improvements that were set to take effect, and why residents are still seeing long wait times.
And an easy commute again for this evening, but you're going to need your heaters as temperatures fall from the 50s back into the 40s. I'm going to let you know how cold temperatures are going to be when you wake up tomorrow morning. Plus, well, we could be nearing 70 in the forecast. It's up in my Weather Authority forecast in a couple of minutes.
DPW is the poster child for an agency that needs to be completely revamped. They are the highest funded city agency, and they are failing to perform their most basic functions.
The city's efforts to restore weekly recycling by early 2024 may fall short. You'll remember that timeline was promised in Mayor Brandon Scott's State of the City address earlier this year. But as Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor is reporting tonight, instead of getting recycling back on track, DPW once again citing some setbacks. Rebecca.
Yeah, that's right, Mary. When it comes to restoring weekly recycling, it has just been one broken promise after the next. Take a listen to what DPW had to say in a city council hearing held last month when they were pressed on the issue.
When are we restarting weekly recycling? You will see the first rollout in February. That'll be our first initial rollout, and then you'll see the rest of it will be around April or so.
So as you just heard, in October, DPW claimed recycling would be fully back on track by April of next year. It's cutting it close, but that would fulfill the mayor's promise to restore weekly recycling by Q1 of 2024. However, in another hearing held just 3 weeks later, that timeline was suddenly walked back. Take a listen.
When are we restarting recycling?
We still don't have a date yet.
So were those dates that we were given previously, are those incorrect?
I would say we're evaluating those more thoroughly.
Now, today I sent questions to DPW asking why the new weekly recycling timeline was retracted, when a new timeline will be established, and what is the response to residents who are frustrated by the lack of basic city services. So far, I have not heard back. I also sent questions to the mayor's office asking for his response to DPW potentially breaking a promise that he made to city residents. As of News 7 tonight, I have not heard back from the mayor either. Reporting live in Baltimore City, Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
All right, a good-looking day with highs at 60 degrees, which is right close to where we should be, if not a couple of degrees above for this time of year. We're now at 52 on the Mile 1 Taos Cam. Clear skies. Go look there in the background with the blue skies now giving way to darkness. Winds out of the west-northwest at 7, and our humidity at about 44%, I believe. We're right outside Towson Town Center here with the crisp conditions. 52 Baltimore right now, 52 at Cockeysville, 51 at Elkton, some low to mid-50s, Columbia, Laurel, all the way back to about Annapolis. The temperature's running generally up to about 5 degrees or so above average for most locations. But now that the sun's setting, that temperature surplus is beginning to disappear. But nonetheless, temperatures were a bit warmer today than yesterday, and they're going to stay that way for tomorrow and could even warm up a little bit more as we start unleashing the floodgates to some of this warmer weather that's down to our south. It won't come with the moisture, though, at least not initially. That's the good news. Fair weather high pressure is going to be our fair weather friend over the next several days. So all the way through about Wednesday, Thursday, I think we have dry skies, maybe even Friday. Cold front off to the north, that's going to start sinking south and east. And ahead of that, we're going to continue to warm up. Could even be near 70 degrees by the end of the week. But as we head into the weekend, some showers will begin moving in maybe Friday night into Saturday morning, and then the temperatures go back on the fall in the pre-Thanksgiving weekend. Now, down in the tropics, there's a 70% chance of tropical development. This is headed somewhere toward about Hispaniola, potentially maybe even Haiti. Getting this, at least some rain and maybe some wind. There's a high chance of development here. So this, over the next 7 days, could become a late season tropical depression, maybe even a tropical storm. So that's one to watch. Otherwise, future scan around here keeps all that away. We're just clear and chilly tonight. A little bit colder probably than we woke up to this morning, down to the low and mid 30s, maybe a couple upper 20s in the cold spots. So get ready for a frosty beginning. And then by tomorrow afternoon, those temperatures are back too close to 60 degrees. 65 on Thursday. Of course, we got Thursday night football here downtown. So during the game, it's probably falling through the 40s. So you'll need jackets there, but great for tailgating. Late showers Friday. Most of the day is dry near 70. 57 on Saturday, morning showers, and then cool as we head toward Turkey Day week.
Still ahead tonight, calls for ceasefires. The conflict in the Middle East continues. The rally in our nation's capital to free hundreds of hostages.
A tamer than expected read on consumer inflation has economists celebrating. I'm Atrell Nashar with a look at the effect it's having on actual prices coming up.
A live look from Washington, D.C. tonight, with the House just moments away from voting on a continuing resolution which would keep the government open and avoid a shutdown this Saturday. This resolution differs from other plans like a laddered approach which sets 2 deadlines instead of 1, funding some parts of the government until December and the rest in mid-January. We spoke to Maryland Congressman Andy Harris ahead of the vote about why he thinks this bill is the way to keep government open.
I think it's going to be a bipartisan agreement. I think that we're doing the right thing. We're going to avoid an omnibus bill with this continuing resolution, but we're going to keep government open. And I think that's the right compromise.
If the bill passes the House, it then goes to the Senate for another vote and would need the president's final approval. But this would only be a stopgap measure, setting new deadlines of December 7th and January 19th. October's consumer inflation report coming in slightly better than expected, sparking a rally on Wall Street today. But as national correspondent Atra El-Nashar reports, data beneath those headlines shows prices for many necessities are still going up.
The U.S. is now the closest it's been since the pandemic to seeing an inflation rate economists consider normal. In October, consumer price inflation fell to 3.2% year over year. Drops in utility costs and gas prices are a big reason why.
I imagine for a lot of people it feels good to know that they can get more fuel for less money.
Core consumer inflation, which excludes volatile food and energy prices, dropped slightly to 4%. The better-than-expected reading sent stocks soaring Tuesday. Also welcome news at the White House. President Biden says he's still working every day to lower costs, praising a 21-month streak of unemployment below 4%. But recent polling paints a more complicated picture of how everyday Americans feel. A new Financial Times Michigan Ross survey finds 57% of voters say they're having trouble getting by or just meeting expenses. While the overall inflation rate is declining, actual prices at the... According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, a moderate monthly grocery ad said they're better off financially than when Biden took office. The issue front and center in the 2024 presidential race.
The rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer.
We have inflation in this country that is choking every American family that wants to try to rise up.
With just shy of a year before the election, the president working to convince Americans the strong labor market and his administration's long-term investments in things like infrastructure mean they'll be better off. On Capitol Hill, I'm Atra El-Nashar reporting.
Coming up after the break, tens of thousands gathering in our nation's capital to show support for Israel. Fox 45 News takes you there live with the calls to free hundreds of hostages. Maryland spending record amounts on public education. Project Baltimore questions why the teachers union is taking in millions as student test scores continue to plummet.
Fighting is ramping up near the largest hospital in the Gaza Strip.
Israeli forces are backing their ground operation with airstrikes.
Much of the international focus remains on Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital, where the UN says patients and newborns are in need of supplies. Overnight, Israel said it would deliver incubators to the facility, but it's not clear how those would be powered. Without fuel, relief groups say they may be forced to pause operations in the region.
Israel has accused Hamas of using hospitals as command centers. Israeli forces released this video, which they say shows Hamas weapons found in the basement of a children's hospital, as well as rooms they believe held hostages.
Meanwhile, Israel continues to open humanitarian corridors for people to flee northern Gaza. The UN says another 200,000 people left northern Gaza in the last 2 weeks. Israel's military says it's lost at least 47 soldiers since the ground operation began.
In Washington, D.C., tens of thousands of people from Jewish organizations and other organizations across the country gathering at the National Mall for the March for Israel. The rally was to show solidarity with Israel, call for the release of hostages being held by Hamas, and to condemn rising acts of anti-Semitism following the October 7th Hamas-led attack on Israel. Fox 45's Amy Simpson was there today talking with local people who made the trip.
Tens of thousands here along the National Mall for today's March for Israel. Just take a look at these crowds, and among them, several thousand from Baltimore.
For some, it started this morning. 35 miles away in Baltimore County, more than 70 buses loading up. Thousands from around the Baltimore region making the trip here to the National Mall, participating in today's March for Israel.
We're all here to show that Baltimore supports Israel.
This Pikesville woman among the masses.
On our bus alone, we took an associated bus at 9:30 this morning. There were Jews of all different types and stripes. There were kids as young as, I think, 6 or 7 on our bus, with people probably in their 70s and 80s.
Bringing her 11-year-old son, the 6th grader, missing school to participate.
But I chose to come because it's so important.
And as you can imagine, security is really tight here downtown. There's these security checkpoints at several spots around the mall, along with fencing. And take a look at all these law enforcement vehicles capped off with dump trucks blocking the end of the road here.
And along with that highly visible police presence, a visible show of solidarity from all corners of the continent, from Miami to Philly to Ontario. Participants in today's rally converging on the nation's capital from both near and far. Despite tragedy and war spurring today's march, some seen dancing, singing, or chanting, many wearing or waving Israeli flags, or holding signs calling for the release of hostages. This Howard County woman said it's personal for her.
He's a distant relative. He lives in Israel, and he was kidnapped from the Nova Music Festival.
An emotional day for some, seeing the sea of demonstrators standing shoulder to shoulder, even as the conflict continues in the Middle East.
And I'm proud to be Jewish. I'm proud to be standing up for our people, and I hope that some of the hate will stop.
We just need peace. We just need peace.
In Washington, Amy Simpson, Fox 45 News.
Jay Korf with our Sinclair sister station in Washington, D.C., was also at the rally today. He joins us live to continue our team coverage as the massive event wraps up. Jay?
Yeah, good evening. In fact, wrapping up right now, they're starting to kind of pull everything down, and a lot of folks did kind of a unofficial march up to the west lawn of the White House, but pretty much things are wrapping up. I have to say, we heard a lot of things today, a lot of passionate perspectives. The two things that really stick out: one, folks here are saying, look, the United States hopefully accepts the fact that Israel is going to defend itself, to root out the evil of Hamas and those who support Hamas. But second, the thing that was very, very resonant and unequivocal is this passionate desire for a dignified path toward peace. And they hope that it happens sooner than later. Countless supporters of Israel from far and wide, faithfully adorned in pride.
Stick with us and know that this is really about the fight of good versus evil in the world.
Flooded the National Mall Tuesday afternoon to convince the U.S. and the broader world to back Israel's fight against terror in the wake of October 7th attacks by Hamas militants that killed more than 1,000 Jews. More lives taken in one day, dating back to the Holocaust.
If you really look at what's happening and you really look into it and educate yourself, you're going to realize that if we weren't fighting, we wouldn't exist.
We met people from congregations from California to Tennessee, New York to the DMV.
I think every Jewish person in the world has family in Israel. And at this specific moment in history, everybody there is our family.
These are members of a synagogue in Pikesville, Maryland.
Israel's always been very important to us and to our family. It's always been our homeland.
So important to Jamie Rubin that her son is now serving in an Israeli military combat unit.
Feeling a really strong connection to the Jewish homeland, just felt a calling to go and protect it with everything he has.
We found two consistent messages while talking with most attendees. The right for Israel to push back when attacked.
Why can't we defend ourselves?
And an abiding desire for sustainable peace, arguably among the greatest challenges facing humanity. Rabbi Tom Gerth from Charlottesville believes if waged properly, peace is possible.
The sign that I saw that identified with the most says, stop terror, protect civilians, and seek peace. And that, I think, is the way forward. And it's got to be all at the same time, as much as we can.
And one final note, the other thing that stands out is anti-Semitism. A lot of conversations today with young people, in particular college students, coming in from universities all across the Midwest, the Northeast, all over the place. They say that the frequency and the intensity of anti-Semitism that they are seeing and feeling directly on campuses across the country has been shocking to them. And they hope that as the days and weeks follow, that it will lessen. So we are live along the National Mall in D.C. I'm Jay Korf for Fox 45 News.
As Maryland spends record amounts of money on public education, we are learning more about where some of that money ends up.
As Project Baltimore's Chris Papps found, the teachers union is getting millions of extra dollars as student test scores are dropping fast.
The Maryland State Education Association, the teachers union. It's one of our state's largest and most powerful unions with a stated mission to elevate the quality of public education for all students. But a Project Baltimore investigation has found over the past decade, the teachers union's wealth has surged, while the quality of public education in Maryland has not.
I think we have a problem.
Anaban Basu is an economist and former member of the Baltimore City School Board.
Unions do not exist to profit maximize. And if the union, in particular, the teachers unions, for instance, are elevating adults over children, then they're not the force for good that they are supposed to be, given their federal mandate, their organizational mission.
MSEA is a tax-exempt nonprofit organization. Most of the money it collects starts as tax dollars given to schools and paid to teachers, who in turn pay union dues. We pulled the union's financial statements going back 10 years. In 2013, MSEA reported revenues of $19.8 million. By 2022, revenues had grown 34% to $26.5 million, the highest amount on record. Just last year, in 2022, revenues increased by nearly $2 million. But as MSEA's revenues have surged over 10 years, student performance has plummeted. According to federal test scores, in 2013, Maryland students outperformed the national average in fourth grade math and reading. In reading, with a 232, Maryland was tied for the highest score in the nation. But by 2022, our state had fallen below the national average in both categories. Fourth grade reading dropped 20 points. Maryland went from the best in the nation to below average. And eighth grade math and reading scores saw similar declines.
And teachers make significantly more than they used to. But then the question becomes, okay, that's fine. What is the taxpayer getting for all of this money that's flowing into the educational system? Some of it to teachers, some of it to unions, some of it to others. And the answer is not much.
But it's not just union revenues that have hit record highs. Take a look at this. In 2013, MSEA reported assets valued at $16.6 million. By 2022, the value of those assets had nearly tripled to $45.3 million. Now, to be clear, this is not the pension fund that teachers pay into. This $45 million is owned by the union, money that is supposed to be used to elevate the quality of public education. So how does all that money and all those assets help students? To find out, we sent multiple emails to MSEA President Cheryl Boast and other union officials asking for an interview or an explanation. We never heard back. No interview, no email, no phone call, no anything.
Seems like this money is just piling